Nick Sarlo here from Shadowhunters. I'm here with the phenomenal Sylvia Shults. Sylvia has written numerous books, especially about the Pollock Hospital, which we were at right now. Sylvia, how are you?
I am fantastic, Nick. I write books of paranormal nonfiction, true ghost stories. And as I was working on the first one, people kept asking me, have you heard about the Peoria State Hospital? And I live just 10 minutes away from here, so I was really interested, and people said, oh, it's an abandoned, haunted mental asylum. And I'm like, oh, tell me more.
Right.
So I got to researching the history of the Peoria State Hospital, because that's what the ghost stories are all about. You don't get the ghost stories without having the history.
Right.
So the more I learned about the history of this place, the more fascinated I became, and that's how I ended up writing 3 books on the Peoria State Hospital.
Okay. Now, have you had any personal experiences here?
I have had loads. I have been coming to the Peoria State Hospital for, it's been 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Because the first story I wrote about it was in a book that came out in 2010. So
nice.
Yeah, it's hard to realize.
Right?
It's been
Where did time go?
Every bit of 10 years. So I've had lots of wonderful experiences here. Most of them have happened here in the Pollock Hospital, because this is the building I'm most familiar with, and I've become comfortable with a couple of the spirits in here.
Okay.
Most notably one in the basement, who has told us that his name is Chris, and the last year he remembers is 1905.
Okay.
So I have played ragtime music for him, and we have danced together.
Okay.
So that's been wonderful. And Rhoda Derry, of course, is one of the spirits that is very dear to my heart.
Okay. Now, there was another building that was connected, but it was torn down. Can you explain a little bit about that one?
Absolutely.
About that building?
At the hospital's height, the Peoria State Hospital was in existence from 1902 to 1973. At its height, there were 63 buildings on the hilltop.
Okay.
There are 12 buildings left now. There were 13 a couple years ago, and over the summer a couple years ago, the Bowen building was torn down. That people didn't seem to think that was much of a loss, because it was just the administration building. But it was a loss to those of us who really love history and the history of this asylum.
Oh, absolutely. Because I've seen pictures of it, and I would love to go in there.
It was a gorgeous building.
Yeah.
I mean, the architecture on it was just astounding, and it's also the site of, people think it was this haunted building because a lot of people died there. That's really not the case.
Right.
There were only 3 deaths in that building.
Okay.
What it was the administration building at the end of the hospital's history, but before that, it was a very fine nurses' college.
Okay.
And Dr. George Zeller, the first superintendent of the asylum, was extremely interested in empowering women. He would go around and he would lecture at classrooms, and he would talk to young women, and he would say, if you want a career as a nurse, come to my asylum, I will train you. And he encouraged them to go on to become doctors in their own right.
Right.
And he said, you want to be a lawyer? Go study to be a lawyer. You can do anything you want to.
Right.
So he empowered so many young women in that building. And now it's gone.
Yeah. Well, definitely I'm still guessing that anybody that has died in that location, that their souls are still in that spot.
I expect so. The 3 deaths that we know of in that building historically, where there was a housekeeper that was taken ill and fell into a diabetic coma and passed away a couple days later. She may have been taken to a room in the Bowen building. She may have been taken to a room in a building called the Rose Bigler, which also no longer exists. And the other 2 deaths in that building were Dr. George Zeller and his wife Sophie.
Oh.
Yes.
Actually, I didn't even know that.
Yes. There were 3 floors in the Bowen building and then the attic. And the 3rd floor, the first 2 floors were the nurses' classrooms.
Okay.
And lecture halls and whatnot. And the 3rd floor was apartments. People would come to visit their loved ones in the asylum. And if they came from out of town, they were put up in those apartments. And it was also for doctors' use.
Okay.
Now, when Dr. Zeller retired, he had the superintendent's cottage was on the grounds here, and that's where he and Sophie lived.
Right.
And Mr. Bowen, who the Bowen is named for, he asked Dr. Zeller to come and live in one of the apartments in what is now called the Bowen building, and then it was just the administration building, the employees building rather. And it took 2 conversations. But finally, Dr. Zeller understood what Mr. Bowen was asking. And Dr. Zeller was this ramrod straight military man and just took no nonsense from anyone.
Right.
And this backbone of steel military gentleman was in tears at the thought of the fact that his staff and his patients wanted him around.
Right.
Wanted him still to be a part of the Hilltop life.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, like I said, just looking at that building, you could just tell that, I mean, it seemed like people were having a good time there, because I know I've seen pictures in like a book somewhere, but it showed like they would go outside, get like fresh air, like on their balcony level, and what that was kind of like a cure for tuberculosis, they thought, didn't they?
Yes, Dr. Zeller was very big on fresh air therapy for tuberculosis. Now, the reason the Bowen building had those beautiful balconies is that I wish I could go over there and show you,
right.
But it's not there anymore. But when you used to walk around the Bowen building, when it was still standing, you would see these holes leading into, you could look through the holes with a flashlight and see right into the basement. And that really confused me for a while until someone told me, the historian of the place told me, that that's where the wooden beams, the support beams were for the balconies.
Okay.
And Dr. Zeller put so much love and care into the designing of this building because he knew he wanted it for a nurses' college.
Right.
And he took so much crap for that. They're like, well, this is the beginning of the 20th century, so women couldn't even vote yet.
Right.
So people were like, why are you building this huge, magnificent building just for a couple of women? And he's like, if women come to this school to be trained, they're going to be empowered, they're going to have their own careers, they can make their own living. He was very, very concerned about that.
Right.
So that's why he put so much love and care into it. Also, the Bowen building was very iconic in the memories of a lot of the people who lived in this area. This was a part of the community.
Right.
People, it was an open campus. There were no gates around. There were no walls. There were no fences to keep the patients in. They were allowed to wander wherever they wanted to. And people could come in and visit the patients whenever they wanted to. So on Sundays, when most of the visiting hours took place, if your loved one was bedbound or geriatric, you could go in and see them. But if they were mobile, they would come out to visit you. They would leave their cottages or their rooms. They would come out to visit you. And so many family picnics were held on the front lawn of the Bowen.
Right.
With that beautiful building as a backdrop. So that's why it was just the public face of the Peoria State Hospital. And it's a shame that it's lost.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm glad that they still kept the Pollock Hospital up.
Oh, the Pollock Hospital was amazing.
We've been investigating all night, and I mean, this is our second time here, but the first time we came, we just had so much activity happen.
Oh, the charts
That was the first
amazing.
time you've ever seen a rocking chair move by itself.
Blew my mind. Awesome stuff.
It was so much fun. Now, Sylvia, where can people purchase your books from?
Well, of course, they're on Amazon.
Okay.
The 3 books about the Peoria State Hospital are Fractured Spirits, Hauntings and History at the Peoria State Hospital. Fractured Souls is the sequel to that. After I wrote the end for Fractured Spirits, people kept having experiences,
Right?
including shadow hunters. Because shadow hunters visited the Peoria State Hospital after I finished writing Fractured Spirits.
Okay.
So a lot of their experiences are in Fractured Souls.
Check it out.
And then there's a 3rd book that's not part of the Asylum series. It's called 44 Years in
Yes.
Darkness, and that is the story of Rhoda Derry, which is one of our most beloved patients.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember definitely the first time we were here and other investigators that were on our team, they felt Rhoda's spirit here.
Rhoda welcomed them to the hilltop in the most amazing ways.
Yeah, and especially after visiting her grave and giving her the chewing tobacco and all that stuff. Oh, yeah.
So in order to understand all these inside jokes, read 44 Years in Darkness. They
Definitely
all
a good
will
book.
Be explained.
And then if you guys like scary stories for Christmas,
Oh, yes.
yes.
I do write books other than the ones on the Peoria State Hospital, and one of my favorites is called Spirits of Christmas. That is over 120 true ghost stories about Christmas and Christmas Eve and December and the dark of winter. It's just loads of fun.
It's perfect for the holiday time.
Right.
Get it for Christmas.
And you know, the holidays are just right around the corner.
Oh, yes. Which is very weird to think about since we didn't really even have a summer because of a pandemic.
Right.
But thank you so much, Sylvia, for chatting with me and getting to have people know you more and investigating the Pollock with us again.
Thank you, Nick, for inviting me along tonight. It's been a blast, and we are going to keep on having wonderful experiences here.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you later.
Ciao.